Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Community Conversation Summer Series, where we are focused on power. And this is the first of three series. This one being titled Power Shift. We're also going to have a second one on August 25th. That's going to be on the Power in Partnership. And then on September the 29th at 12 o'clock, we will have another session on how power shows up in culture and the arts. I'm Vaughn Perry. I'll be serving as your moderator today. I'm the Director of Equity with the 11th Street Bridge Park, which is a project of building bridges across the river. And so, again, thank you all for tuning in today. I have some amazing guests, artists, change makers, system disruptors on the panel with me today. And so I want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then I'll just really give a quick setup for how the conversation is going to be laid out today and the intent behind it. And then we'll kind of just go from there. And so we will start with Kiana, who is on my top right.
Hi, peace family. I'm Kiana Jones. I'm the founding executive director for Congress Heights Arts and Culture Center, which is located right on 3200 MLK Avenue. We're right up the street from MLK Deli and down the street from Ballou High School. We are an art gallery of, we're so many things actually. So first and foremost, we're an art gallery. We support local Black and Brown artists to exhibit solo exhibitions. We know that's a rarity in most galleries, but we also do programming and workshops that serve our community specifically. We collaborate with other organizations that need space to do their programs and workshops. And then on top of all of that, we're rental space for our community. So there's artist studios in our space, there's business space in our space, and the community can come in and just use it how they see fit. So we've had anything from baby showers to bachelorette parties, sipping paints, you name it. And we have a really nice rooftop too. Outside of that, I'm a mother of two and a full-time artist. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
And we'll go to Kamon.
All right, well, Kamon Freeman, Angry Black Man in Therapy, representing one half of WEAC Radio on the radical side of Martin King Avenue on the underbelly of the nation's capital. We're a full-service media production company. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary November the 11th. And we are now an anchor institution in Anacostia. And we look forward to be active participants in the ongoing revolution that we're all now engaged in.
Awesome. And last but not least, Anika.
Hi, my name is Anika Hobbs. I am the owner and chief curator for Nubian Human. We are an ecosystem of Black-owned and Brown-owned independent brands, along with conscious consumers. We have retail locations in Anacostia at 1231 Good Hope Road, around the corner from WEAC Radio, down the street from Congress Heights Arts and Culture Center. We also have a location in Mount Vernon, Baltimore, Maryland, which we opened in 2019. That's our baby awesome space. And we're just really excited to be here. We really focus on product-based Black-owned and Brown-owned brands. We utilize our space for multiple things too. We have poetry nights. This weekend we have headshot photo shoot, art installations, crazy pop-ups all the time. So we utilize our space for all sorts of things as well.
Awesome. So let's jump into it. Thank you all again for being here today. Today's conversation has been titled Power Shift, and the concept of that is really the idea that we want to shift power back into the hands of the community. We talk a lot about equity in the work that we do, and equity is becoming, in a lot of ways, this buzzword in organizations. And I don't believe that you can have a candid conversation about equity if you're also not talking about a redistribution of power. And what we see as equity, I would say, really isn't equity. It's people that are in power oftentimes parceling out crumbs where there's still no shift in real power. And so, you know, I would offer that this conversation we can explore what it means to have real power in your community, and what does power even mean, right? And so we can shift even our definitions of, or our perspectives of what power looks like, and we can start to shift how power can show up within the communities. I'm going to read just an excerpt from a piece that was offered to me in a class. We offer these community leadership empowerment workshops. Gentleman by the name of Bob Hoffman has been instrumental in facilitating these classes. But as we were going through these classes, one of the some of the information he gave us was on this article that was on power, and I just want to read from it really quickly. It was an article titled "Power, Powerlessness, and Empowerment" by Vita McKnight, and I'm just going to read a small excerpt from it and then get you all's thoughts around it. And it goes, where do I want to go from? Some forms of power include economic power, spiritual power, personal power, organizational power, social power, and political power. In every human interaction, there are power issues. However, inasmuch as power is neither good nor bad, the result of the interaction depends on the attitude, skills, and behaviors of those involved. Effective communication skills and assertive behavior are key to exercising and maintaining one's power. Claiming one's personal power is an important step in increasing your abilities to get things done, individually or within the groups and organizations with which you work. Power can be used to positively make things better in our personal and work lives and in our communities and in our work. No one is powerless. Individuals may give up their power, but no one is powerless. Life is about choices and responsibility for those choices. If one chooses to act powerless, then one has to accept responsibility for that choice. This does not mean that when someone, because of conditions, circumstances,
got a little freeze action. Technology is always so great until it's not.
Until it doesn't work. Well, we're still alive, so maybe we can wait till our brother rejoins us. And so we know what the topic
is. Do your radio thing. Yeah, do your radio thing. Go ahead, brother.
We know what the topic is. So, you know, claiming power. I wanted to point out a quick story that is very inspirational to me. Ava DuVernay, yes, that Ava DuVernay has reached out to her hero, Haile Gerima, here, DC's own Sankofa, and is partnering with him to have his workshops done as part of her production company. And that's a big thing. He's going out to LA next month. Haile's going to be an honorary recipient of an Oscar for lifetime award. So I think talking about self-empowerment, it doesn't get no bigger than that. His a brother who was shunned by the industry. For those who are not familiar, his most commercially successful project was Sankofa, and he's operated Sankofa video bookstores on Georgia Avenue across from Howard University, where he taught also for a number of years. And he has been an inspiration for every independent filmmaker. I'm very disappointed that it took Ava DuVernay, who's probably been on the scene, maybe 10 years, to be in a position to do something like this. She's the engine behind him getting honored. But it seems like Spike Lee, who's been on the platform for 30 years, you'd think he would have reached out to Holly a long time ago. But that's neither here nor there. I just want to make sure I throw a little side job because we have opportunities to do something. And so it's just up to us, are we going to do something? And the last thing I want to say, here recently was a sister named Carol Horn from Buffalo, New York, police officer, good cop, who was stopping a bad cop from choking somebody. And she got fired for intervening. She got fired. And for 13 years, she fought her case because they took her pension and everything. And she just got her pension and her back pay, and she's been made whole. And there's a whole law in the city of Buffalo, New York, that should be a national law, that there couldn't be no repercussions against the officer for doing their job and protecting and serving, even if they included protecting the public from a rogue police officer. So I think these are great examples of self-empowerment. That neither one of them waited for permission, and both of them was vindicated by the very system in the end. So I just want to say that, you know, oftentimes when we do something that is an act of power, we're going to face optimum resistance.
Absolutely.
And that does not mean it's not the right decision, and it doesn't mean that we're not going to ultimately be vindicated in doing so. So I hope that gives some people some power. You know, have a tough chin. You know, it's not about how many times you get knocked down, so how many times you can get up. So I think that's my definition of power. So I share to y'all examples of power or how it has affected your lives.
Appreciate you, Kaman. I guess in my personal space, I've gone through, like you said, you was an angry man in therapy. I wouldn't necessarily say I was angry, but I'm definitely in therapy. And I think in that, welcome back, Mom. We just kept going.
My apologies, everyone. Yeah, keep it going.
It's fine till it doesn't work.
Right, exactly.
Talking about power, I had a power outage.
I don't know, that's real bad. And so, well, I could actually segue from that, a power outage. I realized over the last few years, I was just doing too much, and that's exactly what it felt like, a power outage. Like I got overburned because there was a lot of the power that I was giving away, like you mentioned in your excerpt, by just wanting to keep other people comfortable and doing what they wanted me to do rather than the things that I wanted to do and needed to do for myself. And so I think over the last couple of years, I was very intentional about taking my personal power back. And I think in my healing journey, I've realized there's like this pattern that happens in a lot of phases of our lives, right? Where it starts from this center piece, and then there's this reflective piece that goes outside. And I realized the centerpiece starts with myself. So when I took my power back, I was able to, you know, you hear people say all the time, like you have to have enough to pour in yourself to be able to pour out. And so I was very intentional about that and getting my power back just for myself and my personal space, self-care, and just doing what I needed to do for myself, setting boundaries, letting people know when things weren't okay, if I wasn't comfortable, and not just going with the flow. And I think that power gave me so much other space to have power in other places, you know what I'm saying? So that I could just do a better space of self-management, I guess you can say. And I think when you focus on self and you really get into it, and I think that's why art is so important to me, because art was really that tool that I used to get my power back. Because I just really believe art saves lives. It's a way for people to express. It's almost like when you let go, you get filled up again, right? And so I think power for me is really in self-empowerment, but more so on the spiritual and the mental level, right? Like making sure that you're okay to be able to go out and do the other things that you want to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I came in late. I'm not sure if everybody got a chance to give feedback.
It's Anika's turn, yeah.
Okay.
You know, I pretty much have to piggyback off the both of you all, because, you know, one of the things that my father taught me when I was in my early 20s, may he rest in peace, was, you know, power is a mental state, right? So something or someone only has power unless you allow them to. And the context of the situation was I was on, you know, the district team working for a retailer, and I had a boss that I was not getting along with. and she was quick to fire everyone. But it comes to some point where like you've had enough. And he was like, you need to take your power back. She's not important unless you allow her to be important. Oprah's not important. If you've never heard of Oprah, you don't know who that is. She has no power to you in your life, right? So you give people that power. And that was one thing that my dad really poured into me. And unfortunately, I went back to her and I told her that she had no power. But, you know, I felt liberated. But, you know, just within that, though, I always remember that just as I'm going into anything, any situation. And, you know, that's one thing we've had just being a small retailer ourselves, having a very niche market, but having a strong penetration as far as like Black owned products. You know, we've had big mass retailers come to us and kind of stronghold us for our IP, our connections, anything with that. And we had to continuously remind them that small businesses can be giants too. And so that's one thing that we hold in front of us. That's one thing that I speak to with my team is that as small as we are in our community and those that we keep around us, we can be change agents in where we need to be change agents. And it may not be in that big arena, but on these small stages or wherever we are, we can make those differences. So just like Kimon said with Ava DuVernay, she created her own and she's bringing others with her. And I think that that's what we need to continuously do. We constantly talk about it. We don't need a seat at their tables.
Right.
We don't. You know, we really are and have everything that we need. If we have allies within that mission, then we can accept that. But I think it's time that we start to build and blaze our own. So,
and Anika, I want to build off of that, right? We talked about how do we, one, use our own power that we have, right? And all of you all gave different examples of how you've allowed your individual power to show up. But how do we start to translate that to others, right? How do we, one, model that for others, but then two, use that same power to empower others so that they can tap into their own resources and strengths and skills, so that collectively, you know, we can really start to be those agents of change or systems disruptors that we've talked about.
Well,
I always say, oh, sorry, go ahead, Pima.
No, ladies first.
I always say be hot, which is honest, open, and transparent. I think it's really important to, when people talk about representations, to show yourself and be human and let people know that you're going through things, because people will always, based on, you know, this set of power, whatever perception of power that they have, like Anika saying, what your mindset is, people will put you in a box and just say, okay, she's this person and she doesn't deal with these things, or, you know, they don't have to deal with these things because of this powerful, you know, presentation that they receive. But I think it's really important to, in that same space, show them these vulnerable spaces and let them know the steps that it took you to get here. It's really important. I mean, I know there's a lot of successful people and they talk about how you can do it and how it's possible, and if they listen to anybody else, but they don't really break down the steps of what that looks like. And I think, especially personally for me and my healing journey, is I've been very transparent about what that looks like and what going to therapy looks like and feels like, and how it's not linear and how it can just be a up and down here. On some days I have good days and some days I have bad days, but I still push through and persevere. When people hear that, it gives them a hope. It gives them a reflection that they can, something tangible, right, that they can aspire to. So I think transparency is really important.
Nice. Come on.
Yeah. You know, the very first person I ever had the honor of interviewing was Gregory Porter. For those who don't know, Gregory Porter is the critically acclaimed, world-renowned artist. And so I interviewed him. He didn't know it was my first interview. And we was talking to him, and I said, what was your big break? And he said his big break was when he decided that he was going to sing. Like, this was what he's going to do. He said, like, I wrote all these songs. I must be a singer. That, you know, he said his big break was a self-realization when he decided this is who I am and this was what I'm going to do. And that was where I was in life, I was still struggling with my decision or what I was about to do, because I was met with a lot of resistance. I just want y'all to imagine I'm in a press conference, and NPR is over here, Wall Street Journal's over there, and you watch the Post over here, and I raise my hand, and the mayor says, WEAC Radio. So it takes a lot. I had to decide. So what Great Report was saying, that self-realization. And what we have to do is try to help people make a decision. We've already decided, but to answer the question, we have to help people make a decision. And I think Alice Walker said that the greatest power is convincing people they don't have any.
Yeah.
So we have to go about convincing them that they have power, then get them to make a decision to claim that power. Crown's already been bought and paid for. We just got to wear it. But I'm comforted by some of the greatest examples of power I've seen is often overlooked. We talk about, all of our great leaders all the time and their contributions, and rightly so. But we don't really mention that, James Brown was the reason why we even started calling ourselves Black. Before you couldn't call African or African Black, whatever their colonial preference was. But that was the only term that we claimed for ourselves. And he didn't hold no meeting. He just sang about it. He sang about it, and we decided to accept it and claim our power. We decided, on an individual basis. But we all kind of danced the same beat for a minute. And I think that's one of the commonalities around the African diaspora that we should be rallying around. Like Anika said, building our own table, because we're basically dismantling the institution, the 500-year-old institution, the dominant framework on the planet, the same economic system structurally basically still in place. We have to work outside that system to the best of our abilities and create something else, because I think that this is an empire and all empires fall, and we have to decrease our level of dependency on that decaying, fossil fuel burning, global warming, corrupt, lying, hypocritical, militaristic, imperialist, racist system, and have something that increases our interdependence on each other. Okay. There's so many examples of bad business practices in our communities and dealing with us, from the point that they want to touch our hand when they took our money, which is why you can't put money on the table in front of an old timer. They'll cuss you out. They'll look at you like you're crazy. You better put that in my hand, because we come from an experience of being disrespected with our money. And I think those days are long gone, and I think that's the power shift. Because we're going from accepting the things we cannot change to changing things we can no longer accept. And and the last I close out is that we're very familiar with Martin Luther King's last speech, but we're not as familiar with his next to his last speech, which was given right here in Washington, D.C., and it was called Remaining Awake During a Great Revolution, March 31st, 1968. He goes on to say that far too often people find themselves living in periods of great social change, but yet they fail to develop the new ideas and new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. So when you have a situation like Washington, D.C., with the greatest disparity of wealth in the nation, where the average white family has 81 times the wealth of the average Black family, you can't just simply have a conversation about, well, we're going to remove the eviction moratoriums because we need to get back to normalcy. Well, normal wasn't working then, and it definitely is not working now, because you have a situation where you have a disproportionate amount of Black people who are behind in their rent. So you cannot just blanketly start evicting people. So that's going to remain to be seen what kind of power shift that's going to bring, because the system actually doesn't have the capacity to evict 20% of the city. Not to mention that it's freaking inhumane. So we're going to see where the power shift, because capitalism is going through a power shift right now, and I think we're at a very interesting crossroads right now. And Martin Luther King said it best: chaos or community. And hopefully we can start using our power collectively to make sure it's more of the community than the chaos.
Kimon just dropped a bunch of bombs and nuggets. And Anika, you had mentioned earlier, just talking about we don't have to wait we don't have to beg for a seat at the table. You didn't use those words, but we can create our own tables, right? I think given some of the other thoughts that we've heard, like, what does that look like to you, right? Like, what does creating our own table look like to you? And how is that something that we can build upon?
Yeah, I think we need to have the realization that building your own table doesn't mean it has to be a 6-seater. It can always just be you, right? Yeah. You just have to start somewhere. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I always try to tell everyone, like social media, this world that we live in now, the internet has you to think that to be of impact, to create change, it's like you have to come out with guns blazing. And that's not always it. One thing that we talk about often is just the growth of bamboo, right? So bamboo grows under the ground for like 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden it shoots up. It takes one seed to make a whole blossom grow. Yeah. So I think it's really focusing on what do you want to do? What type of impact do you want to create? And you yourself start building that. You start building it, and then you start bringing folks into it. Like, to be honest, New Being Human, the reason why we're here is because of folks like Kimon and Kiana. Honestly, we've worked together before. If I need something, I will call one of these two. Yeah. So about one of the things that I've learned actually being in DC, because I'm not originally from this area, was community. Mm-hmm. And I tell people all the time, you cannot write that in a business plan. Mm-hmm. What we have been gifted, even from the 2 individuals I'm on this panel with, you can't write that in a business plan. But what I did was I created a seed, grew it, watered it for years before New Being Human actually ever existed in real fruition. And then folks will come and support because you're doing something that works. Mm-hmm. I've gone to their events. We've supported each other in various ways. Kimon is like one of our best customers ever, who tells us about ourselves often too, but it's like, it's just, I think, so to really reel it all in, I think it's start small, start building, and bring others into that journey who align with the vision and mission of what you're trying to create. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden that 1-seater will become 6. Then you start sitting 12. Then all of a sudden now you need a theater because there's so many of you now just driving to make this impact and this difference. Yeah. But you also have to realize, just like any army, just like any war, everybody is not going to be going in the same direction as you. Right. And that's okay. As long as your mission and your vision is clear and where you're going, that destination is real, you'll get there. You'll get there. But the biggest thing is like change takes a while. It's not just about dropping a dope meme on Instagram. That's not enough. Right. It's so much more behind the scenes. And a lot of what people don't see is where the work is done. Because what you see is kind of like the little result we can get out of that. But a lot of the work is done behind the scenes. Yeah.
No, I think that's beautiful. And especially when you start to talk about how change can take so much time. I mean, if we think about it, like at least here, I mean, we're dealing with 400 plus years of oppression, right? That's not going to change overnight. And so in some of the change that we want to see, we're not going to be able to see, right? We can set things in motion into a positive direction. And so we mentioned Bob Hoffman earlier, but he talks about like when a chick is trying to get out of an egg, right? And so he has us all visualize this egg, and he's just like, the way that this chick is hatched out of this egg, it just has to keep pecking at the egg. And that's almost like how we see change, is incrementally, right? And so we just got to keep pecking at it. And at some point, we're going to be able to break out and get our breakthrough. But it takes time to get there. And while you are in that egg, while that chick is in that egg, it seems like he can't get out. And it seems like nothing's ever going to change. But as soon as he sees a crack and he's able to get his head through, oh, it's a whole new world, right? And so likewise with us, we can continue to keep to peck and peck and peck. And then, oftentimes it can seem like, nothing's changing and we're stuck. But as soon as we get our breakthrough, I believe we can start to really see the possibilities that exist. And we don't have to continue to operate within this same framework that we've been conditioned in, right? Kimon mentioned earlier around, he mentioned things like capitalism or just this model that we've been accustomed to. And so this isn't the only model, right? This is just what we've been conditioned to. And so what are some other models out there that we can start to possibly explore? Kiana, what are your...
Can I say something about that?
Absolutely.
I'm just going to say the pecking part about it, I think, is what defines the person, right? It's like, are you going to keep pecking? Because it's not just about the time, it's about the commitment to the work over time. And so I think the people that don't want to do the work, that's when you fall short. Like, you want to take the shortcuts, or you want to do some janky way of doing it. You have to really be committed to do the work to really make change and make a difference. Because like you said, it has to be some special driving you that pushes you to go forward, because it may take so long, or it may look like it's not happening, or it may be all these things that discourage you from the end point, but there has to be something in you, which a lot of time is faith, because it's something that you don't see, but something that you definitely believe in that keeps you going. So that's really the difference of it, is, are you committed to doing the work? And people, let's call it what it is. People are lazy. People don't want to do it. People get discouraged and they don't. And like, for me, you got to take a breath too, right? You got to rest, you got to recharge, you got to, like I was saying, get your power back, but you can't stop. And I think that's the biggest thing. You got to be committed to do the actual hard work, because it's not easy either. It's hard.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, listen, I have a couple of other questions, but I want to leave the floor for you all. Are there any questions that you want to raise for the group that you would like to discuss? Come on.
I never want to miss the opportunity to define equity. I think so many people confuse equality and equity. And I think so we need to make sure that we first start from a common premise that we all understand what it is that we're talking about. And I found that oftentimes people will nod their heads when they don't fully understand, because they sometimes are embarrassed to ask a simple question that would be instrumental in their comprehension. Because I found that working with the Marion Barrett Summer Youth Employment Program, that literacy is not the inability to read, it's comprehension. Like, if you read this article and I asked you what it meant, you know what it meant, and that's not effective communication. That is not a literate person, and that is a crisis that we have to deal with. And I think we can acknowledge it, and I try to do as much as possible from distributing books for free and what have you. But if anyone Googles the word equity right now and click on images, one of the first images you're going to see is 3 little boys at a baseball game, and all 3 little boys are trying to look over the fence to watch the baseball game. And so the definition of the visual representation of equality is that all 3 boys have a soapbox to stand on so they can watch this baseball game for free over the fence. That doesn't take into account that the boys are different height. The tallest doesn't need a box. He can already see over the fence. And the shortest, he needs 2 boxes. So he can see over the fence. That's equity. So we gave the short guy 2 boxes, and that's what he needs to be made whole. And the tallest doesn't need the box because he's good. That's equity. And that's what we're talking about. And anyone that has a problem with that is supporting that injustice. That is what we call the status quo. That is what we call the conservative. Whereas, because they conserve in what they got. They don't want to give up that box. They don't want to give up that box, even though it's the right thing to do. And the people actually deserve it. So you ain't doing them no favors. You actually owe them.
Yeah.
Okay? How about that?
Come on. I love that visual, right?
That's my favorite illustration, actually. I knew that's exactly what came to my mind when you started saying you was going to break down the definition.
Yeah.
I want my box.
Period.
But watch this. There is a slide that I always use that it has 4 different panels. And in one of them, it talks about equity, it talks about equality, it talks about justice. But there's a slide where, to me, Real equity is get rid of the fence, because these are the barriers that we have, right? You don't need the boxes if we get rid of the fences. Right? We can't talk about equity if we're not also talking about removing the barriers.
Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead, Bob.
You flip the tables like some.
Go ahead, Bob.
I mean, so like, you know, we're talking about how we have to add all of these resources. We wouldn't need these resources if these barriers didn't exist.
Right.
So how do we start to remove the barriers?
Wow. There it is. There it is. Right. There's another example.
That was a mic drop right there. That was a mic drop.
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy. There's another example of that where it's I don't know if y'all seen it. It's like it's a football team, and they're running on the field, and they give half of the team a head start. They're supposed to run, or they're supposed to crawl or something across this whole field. It was another player on their back, and half of the team gets to start halfway up the field, and then the other half starts at the end, and they're supposed to be racing to get to the end. But there's again this full court advantage where you have to break it down. That's the difference in equity and equality.
Yeah,
I like that too.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Sure.
All right. If so, staying along those lines, right? There are around how do we start to not only add resources, but how do we start to think about what those barriers look like? I know that all of you at times can be dependent on grants and funders helping to support your different initiatives and the things that you want to do and how they want to pour into the community. And there can be times when those funders might not always be aligned with your mission, right? Or when you're going after dollars, some of those dollars might not be aligned with all of what you believe in or the mission of the community. And so I guess the question to you all is, how do you draw the line between holding true to your principles and not compromising your beliefs, but also wanting to keep the doors open, the lights on and the doors open? Like, what does that look like for you? Like, what does it look like as you're trying to serve your community?
I'll go ahead with that one. I think, you know, for me, it's been, like I've always said, being clear on what your mission is, being clear on what your values are, being clear on what foundation from which you stand, because otherwise you will be misdirected. So we've gotten grants, we've gotten sponsorships, everything, even from the 11th Street Bridge Park. But if it's been that you're trying to come in and change what my mission and goal is, the mission and goal of our team, it just doesn't work. And I will never, ever put a business, an initiative, an event, anything that we're doing at the risk of if said person does not fund this event, it doesn't happen. If that person does not fund this initiative, it doesn't happen. We will never put ourselves in that predicament. Now, does it help? Yes. Is it supplemental? Yes. But it's not going to be the driver from which this thing actually happens. So I think that's the first thing, is just being clear on your mission and vision, and do they align with that? And having the courage to say no. There's nothing wrong with saying no. And I'm a people pleaser, and I really try my hardest not to be, but I want everything to be rainbows and happy. But it's just, you know, sometimes you do have to say no, and that's okay. And I think also, I had this attorney, my first attorney years ago. One of the things that he taught me was that anything with a number can be negotiated, whether it's time, amount, weight, length, anything can be negotiated. So sometimes it's not always about, okay, they don't align with us, so then we're not going for it. Sometimes it's teaching them what does an alignment look like. If you want to be a part of this initiative, you bend, right? That's the small business being a giant. You have a voice, you got to take your power. And sometimes it's allowing them to sit back and say, you know what, you're right, and we need to do better. Okay, we can still support you in your funding in this way. So I think it's just being clear on who you are and having your voice and learning your power within that.
Awesome. Go ahead, Kiana.
I was going to chime in because this is definitely my life, grants and funding. We're a nonprofit organization. That means donate, and you can write it off. But
shout out.
Exactly. But I think, so especially we are a little bit over 5 years now, and I remember going for my first grant, and this is when they would ask you to come in and do a presentation for your grant. And I remember being so nervous and doing my best to remember to use we whenever I said anything, although I knew it was just me. And then something about that just felt so jacked up at the end. And before I finished, I was like, I need to tell y'all something. And they're like, okay. And I was like, I kind of lied this whole time. And they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, there's no we, there's just me. And at the end of the day, because of who I am and where I come from, I'm born and raised in Southeast. And so that was kind of how this center self-manifested itself, is by creating something I knew I needed when I was younger. But by being who I was telling them exactly what Anika was saying. Like, either way, if y'all give us the money, we're still going to do this, right? And it's still going to be great. And the difference of your money is us using glue and having to put water in it, so we have to stretch it out a little bit, or everybody gets their own bottles of glue, right? So we're going to figure it out. There's always ways. And even literally yesterday, we've gotten to the point where we can get some grant writers. And she called me and asked me if I could move around some of the photos that were on our slide page, on our homepage, to put some of the more conservative pictures up front, because some of the funders that she was looking for, they're a little bit more conservative. And it's just, no, I'm not doing that, because we are who we are, right? And then when you learn who we are, you watch our videos and you see our pictures, you feel who we are, and it's a full representation. So like Anika said, if the alignment isn't there, that's fine too. But we still, like, I'm not going to change myself to be able to get your money, right? And I think the other thing that I wanted to say was I was also, so the first example that I had where we went for the funding, I came back a few later and became a panelist, which I think is really important when we talk about power and representation. I was a grant panelist. And everybody there, I was the only one that looked like me in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of race. I was the only one. And so we were sitting there and we're going through the panels and we're looking at the organization's write-up, and they're looking at the budget, and then they're really like looking at the employees, and they're like, how is this one organization only have one employee and they're saying that they're doing all this stuff? Like, look at this portfolio, like look at this video. And I'm like, I do that every day. You know what I'm saying? And so it gave them, like Anika was saying, a different perspective to say, oh, okay, it is possible. And it, like, that went from not them about to not get funded to being funded. So I think it's just really important to figure out, like Anika said, what it really is that you want to do, how you're going to do it, and really be steadfast in that and believe in that and everything. And I think the biggest thing is be authentic, be real. Like, everything that is for you will come to you and will not miss you, and everything that's not won't catch you. And I think if you set in that, you're good too.
Nice. Come on, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me, it reminds me when I got fired from the post office of making anti-war statements to some congressman's wife. I didn't know who she was or whatever. And I was having a conversation with my parents, and they was mad at, because, like, you know, I had lost that good government job, you know. And my mother was like, well, maybe if you apologize, you know, they'll give you your job back. And I'm like, well, I apologize. I meant what I said. I ain't apologizing. You know? And she was, and I was like, you know, it's for the best. I wasn't even happy. When I said that shit, she was like, happy? It's a job. Who tells you supposed to be happy? And that's when I realized that was their life. You know what I'm saying? And they had to do that we don't have to do now. You know what I'm saying? That's the power shift, because it has to constantly expand. And so I'm reminded of something that the great Melvin Van Peebles, the iconic filmmaker, said, that in life you got two decisions: have what you want or do what you want. You know, in rare instances, you can have both, but you need to decide early which is your guiding principle, because it's going to inform every decision you make. Is this to have what I want or do what I want? And if it's have what you want, then there's certain things you must be willing to do in order to have those things. And you can imagine how that's a slippery slope in a corrupt capitalist system. You have a lot of intellectual prostitutes now doing that. But, or is it do what you want? And if it's do what you want, then there's certain things you're going to sacrifice in order to do those things. You know what I'm saying? Now, no judgment, but clearly do something is paramount importance for me. So I'm definitely do what I want person. But having said all of that, you know, I think that we need to realize that we have to have a deeper purpose. Until we find your purpose, you're going to be wayward. You're going to be lost because you have to have something that centers you. What is your purpose? Yeah. You know, you can ask people what do they do for. Yeah, you can ask people where they're from, but very rare you ever hear someone say, "Who are you?" Mm-hmm. Who are you? And until you can answer that, you're lost, and that's a personal power shift right there. You have to find out who you are, because that's going to be the source of your power or your weakness, depending on how. Yeah.
So, Kiana, you had something to say?
No, I was just saying, I hope you like writing down all these terms and stuff that you got and making a book and publishing them somewhere, because the intellectual prostitute just took me out for a second. But go ahead, my bad, Bob.
Nah, it's all good.
Y'all got excuse me because I'm buzzing people in and out of the door, and Wednesdays we giving free food out, so you got people stopping, communicating me through this window. Like, is this free? I can take this.
Yeah.
Hey, so I want y'all to think I'm losing it over here.
That's power. So we've talked a lot about how individual power can show up, and we talked just briefly like around like how can we engage or enroll other people into our vision, right? Oftentimes, I feel like the elephant in our room can be. And when I say our room, in Black spaces, is people want to paint us with one broad stroke, as if we all think the same, as if we all say the same things, as if we all want to do the same things. And there can oftentimes be a very broad range of thoughts and opinions and beliefs and divisions, and I believe a lot of these divisions can keep us from moving forward and being productive in the community. And so my question to you all is, what are ways that you believe that we can get past our differences and focus more on what are some of the things that we have in common, so that, you know, we're moving forward and we are using our power collectively in a productive way?
I don't think we should get rid of our differences, because those are the things that help create perspective, right? And I think people just need to understand that it's okay to be different. I just see differently than you, and then we can figure out how to find some common ground. I think everybody has to understand that everyone has a role, right? I realized very early on, especially with the protests and everything, that art is just my tool. When Kimon was talking about who are you and what's your purpose, I am a healing teacher, in the sense that I heal to teach and I teach to heal. And the tool that I use to do that is art. And so I'm not the one that's going to be out in every rally, because that's just not my thing. I'm not always going to be canvassing and talking to people, because I'm an empath and, you know, just throws my energy off sometimes. But I will, if there's a paintbrush and some paint and some interactive healing activities that need to be had, count me in. I'm there every time. So I think people need to, like Kimon said, find their purpose, figure out who you are, what's your role in this, because everybody has a role and everybody has a job. Even if it's just a water boy, you hydrating everybody, you filling everybody up. You know what I'm saying? If you're the one that's giving love and hugs and everything, there's a role for everybody. So I think once we figure that out and recognize that our differences are not a hindrance, they're more of just a perspective change in a way that we can propel just in a different way, then I think we'll be more progressive.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I think you have to come to the realization is that there's space for all of us, right? So there's a reason why there's a Walmart and there's a Target, there's a Sam's Club, and there's a Costco, you know, and PJs. There's space for all of us. And I think even just as, you know, Black folks, a lot of times we think like, oh, because one person is doing it, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to stop doing that. But I think also we have to realize that you have to acknowledge those who were doing it and them doing it, and partner. Sometimes it's just partnering with them. Like all three of us, we all have events and festivals, all three of us. You know, the first event that I went to in Southeast DC was Black Love Fest. That's Kimon, you know? And then eventually I was like, okay, I want to do the Black Love Experience. And everybody was like, is it Black Love Fest? And I'm like, no, it's not the same thing. It's not that at all. And I spoke to Kimon about it. And he literally was like, yo, blessings, how you need my help? And every year it's been, how do you need my help? For 8 years. So I think, you know, just realizing that there is space for all of us. And collaboration does make you larger and stronger. Everybody knows if you want to go fast, bring some folks with you, right? That's not how the quote goes, you know. But I think it's just, you got to understand that even just when I think about my business and who we are, or people ask like how you get the followers you got, it's not because Nubian Human, honestly, I'm not even that interesting, but I think it's more so the people that we have worked with and collaborated with are outrageous and outstanding. And because I've said, all right, I see something dope in you and they saw something dope in us and we aligned, it brought all of us up. So I think just really focusing on having a more communal mentality, which even for me is something that's growing every day, understanding what that looks like, but just knowing that there's space for all of us. There are so many other spaces now that focus on purely Black owned or purely Black owned, brown owned, or however you want to say it. But that's okay. We need that.
Yeah.
We need more of that so that our dependency can be on ourselves and nothing outside of that.
Awesome.
Collaboration over competition. Period.
Yeah. You know, my big brother Koji Namdi told me that, you know, there's no competition, there's only collaboration. And when Miss Hobbs shout out to Black Love, that's funny, man, because that was key for me. First, let me say that you had Mama Ayu had Black Love Day. I had Black Love Festival, and he has Black Love Experience. And you have all these little people going back and forth between, like, why they got, and who, you know what I'm saying, who started Black Love, and this is, you know what I'm saying, and it was like, why? You
doesn't
wouldn't
matter.
Yeah, if Keon want to have a July 4th party, and Nika want to have a July 4th party, and I want to have a July, nobody will ever say, why y'all all having a July 4th party?
Right.
No one will ever say that. Because we need to, you know, so we need to change our mindset a little bit. And that was with the conscious community. You know what I'm saying? You know, it was like, was trying to create some friction, you know. But I wanted to say that the Black Love Festival was something that I started. I didn't get a grant initially. And out of pursuing that festival, it created a world of contacts and relationships, and it's also how I met my current business partner today. So WEAC Radio wouldn't exist had I not jumped out there, started with what I have and where I was with the festival. You know, that was my first act of claiming power. You know, and when back in the day, you would have to go before a special events committee to explain to them what it is you want to do when you want to shut down a street and this, that, and the third. And at that special, they don't do it anymore, but the special event committee, you got the fire department, the police department, DDOT, you got all these heads of these agencies sitting this long board, and you got to sit at the end of the table and explain to them what is a Black Love Festival and what are you planning to do with it? You know, yeah, well, I'm gonna bring, well, who's your biggest artist? Well, it's gonna be the Last Poets. Y'all probably know him. America's a Terrorist. Yeah, that's we're gonna have them perform that on Pennsylvania Avenue, bro. You know, I'm serious.
And this was after Unifest, right?
I started in '97. The last Unifest I think was probably had like 90. The Fenty was mayor when the last Unifest. So I would say 99, 2000s, like last Unifest.
Gotcha. Because I'm about to say that probably made them a little nervous too. You know, that Unifest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after Unifest, that's when they make this stuff up as they go along. They wanted you to pay for to have those construction barricades and stuff. And it's thousands of dollars because it's water and
crazy.
Like so. But they don't do all that anymore. But all I'm saying is that if I hadn't started where I was, I would now control a building, a performance venue. You know, resources came by staying true to my purpose, pursuing my purpose. And I just want people to know that, like, we celebrating our 10th anniversary. We didn't even have a business plan, you know, because one thing led to another. It set off a series of events, but you have to start. You have to. You can't wait to become the person you want to be. You have to be the person that you want to become. You know, you have to be it. Like Gregory Porter said, you have to decide. Once you decide, then things start moving.
Do it.
You know.
Yeah, there's a tool called Be Do Act, right? Very similar to what you said. Like oftentimes we see the things that we want and we go after those things instead of just being it first. Just be who you want to become and then do it. And then, you know, all of those things will come to you. We got to wrap up. I know this hour went really fast, but I'm certainly thankful for these guests. You all are amazing. And
I have one quote I want to give before we get out of here, but go ahead.
I'm going to give you a close. I'm going to give you a close in your own rights. Shout out to the Bridge Park team and all of your support. Certainly shout out to Urban Institute, who these conversations were the catalyst for. These conversations were from some white papers that the Urban Institute have prepared. And so if you go to bridgepark.org, you can see those white papers to look at the power shift, the power and partnership, how power shows up in culture and equity. In arts and equity. Our next series is going to be on August the 25th at the same time, and then we're going to conclude this series on September the 29th. We're going to close with one sentence from each of you, and Kimon, you can go last and add your quote, but I'm going to ask you to finish the statement. I use power positively when I ... So you can fill in the blank. I use power positively when I ... I'm gonna pick on Kiana first because she's looking like she's thinking.
I knew you were gonna do that, and I'm sitting here trying to really think.
Yeah, that's a prep question right there.
Right. I use power positively when I
get funded.
Period. When I get this bread. When I show up as my authentic self.
Awesome.
That's mine.
Anika?
I would say I use my power positively when I partner with others. When I partner with others. Mm-hmm.
And Kimon, go ahead and close us up.
I use power positively when I work with young people and give them opportunities and new ideas that I wasn't afforded. I have a closing quote. It's from Milton Friedman. He's not a progressive, but even a broke clock is right 2 times a day. He goes on to say, only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are laying around. That, I believe, is our basic function, to develop alternatives to existing policies, to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable. So therefore, we're doing the impossible.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Kimon. Thank you all to our listeners for tuning in.
People.
We appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everybody. Peace.
Love y'all. See you. Peace. Thank you.
That was fun.
It was.